stormy sea, an island made of black rock began to grow, rising slowly from the churning waters. Superman, summoning every ounce of strength he had, lifted it onto his shoulders and flew it into space. Once he reached a safe distance, his strength gave out. Exhausted, he released the massive rock and blacked out, his body plummeting back toward Earth. He crash-landed in a dense forest. People found him quickly and rushed him to the hospital. But standard medical procedures were useless. Needles broke against his steel-like skin, and the defibrillator short-circuited on contact. Helpless, the doctors could only watch as his vital signs faded. Could Superman really die? And who had brought him to this desperate point? From his distant planet, Krypton, Superman, Earth's lonely guardian, had always hoped to find others like him. 5 years ago, he left Earth on a journey through the cosmos, searching for the remnants of his lost home. But after years of travel, he returned empty-handed. Krypton was gone, completely destroyed. Heartbroken, he made his way back to Earth. When he resumed his life as Clark Kent and returned to his job at the Daily Planet, he discovered that Lois Lane, the woman he loved, had moved on. She was engaged to Richard White, and they had a 5-year-old son, Jason. Clark tried to slip back into human life. One day, a lightweight space shuttle was about to make its first test flight. Lois Lane was on board the transport plane carrying the shuttle, reporting live for the Daily Planet. Suddenly, the entire city suffered a massive blackout. The transport plane and shuttle systems failed. Power was restored quickly, but the damage was already done. The transport plane's separation mechanism malfunctioned, and the shuttle, already set for launch, couldn't abort. This meant the shuttle would drag the transport plane into space, risking total disaster. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Superman arrived. He pried the shuttle away from the transport plane and ensured it launched safely. Then, as the plane began to plummet, he caught it just seconds before impact. Using his superhuman strength to lower it gently into a baseball field, the crowd at the game erupted into cheers, applauding Superman's heroic return. With this flawless rescue, the world knew the Man of Steel was back. The entire city was buzzing with excitement, and no one was more thrilled than the newspaper editor-in-chief. The very next day, he called a meeting with all the editors, instructing them to focus their stories entirely on Superman. For Lois, the woman on Earth closest to Superman, the stakes were even higher. The editor demanded she write an exclusive interview with the Man of Steel, but Lois wasn't eager to comply. She still held a grudge against Superman for disappearing without a word. Not long ago, she had even written an award-winning piece titled "Why the World Doesn't Need Superman." She wanted no part of the superhero drama anymore. Instead, her instincts as a seasoned reporter drew her toward investigating the massive citywide blackout. Lois suspected there was something far more sinister behind it. Superman's arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor, managed to exploit legal loopholes to secure his release from prison and inherit the fortune of a wealthy widow. For years, he had been obsessively studying everything he could about Superman. Recently, his efforts paid off. Following a series of subtle clues, Luthor discovered the Fortress of Solitude, hidden deep within the Arctic glaciers. The fortress held not only the secrets of Superman's past, but also mysterious crystals brimming with immense energy. Luthor seized these crystals and brought them back to his lab, convinced they were the key to world domination. To test the crystal's power, Luthor had his henchmen scrape off a small amount of powder from one. But the careless handling led to disaster. When the powder touched water, it triggered an explosive reaction, unleashing a massive energy surge. The lab was plunged into total darkness, a blackout that extended across the entire city, knocking out all electronic devices. In the chaos, the tiny bit of crystal powder grew into a mass of black rock. This gave Luthor a twisted idea. He planned to drop the crystals into the ocean. When they reacted with seawater, they would create an entirely new landmass. The existing continents in turn would sink beneath the waves, becoming uninhabitable ruins. Luthor would then crown himself ruler of this new world, using it to hold the planet hostage. To ensure Superman couldn't interfere, Luthor orchestrated a museum heist, stealing a chunk of kryptonite, the one substance capable of neutralizing Superman's powers. With his plan fully in motion, Luthor set off on a luxury yacht, heading toward the deep sea to execute his diabolical scheme. Before the ship set sail, two unexpected guests appeared on board: Lois Lane and her son Jason. Lois hadn't given up on investigating the citywide blackout. Determined to uncover the truth, she enlisted a friend at the power company to track where the outage started. A few hours earlier, Lois had been preparing to take Jason to a formal dinner when her friend's findings came through. The first affected area was near this very yacht, the location of Lex Luthor's lab. Without hesitation, Lois turned her car around and headed straight there to dig up clues. Instead, she stumbled right into Luthor's lair. Luthor, aware of her past relationship with Superman, wasted no time capturing Lois and Jason. Smug and overconfident, he couldn't resist boasting about his evil plan. Not long after the yacht reached deep waters, Luthor left one of his goons to guard Lois and Jason while he and his crew moved to the deck. There he dropped one of the crystals into the ocean. As soon as the crystal hit the water, it began to grow rapidly. The sky darkened, the waves grew wild, and the city suffered another massive blackout. At the same time, back in the cabin, Lois seized the distraction to scribble a plea for help. She slipped it into the fax machine and sent it to her newsroom. But her actions didn't go unnoticed. The guard caught her and, enraged, attacked her viciously. Just as he was about to deal a fatal blow, young Jason, seeing his mother in danger, unleashed an incredible burst of strength. He shoved a heavy piano across the room, crushing the guard. It was then revealed that Jason was Superman's son. This was the reason Lois had harbored resentment over Superman's abrupt departure 5 years ago. She had been pregnant with his child. The commotion alerted the other guards, who rushed back to the cabin. Taking one look at the scene, they quickly realized who the boy truly was. But Jason, still unable to control his powers, was overpowered. Lois and Jason were locked in the kitchen, though her faxed plea for help had already reached its destination. Back at the newsroom, Richard, Lois's fiancé, read the distress message and immediately took off in a helicopter to rescue them. Superman, too, was desperate to help, but the crystal's relentless growth had already torn open a massive fissure on the ocean floor, threatening the city. The cracks spread rapidly, causing buildings to tremble, massive billboards to collapse, and underground gas pipelines to rupture, sparking fires. Faced with this growing disaster, Superman had no choice but to put aside his personal concerns. The city needed him now more than ever. On the open sea, Richard finally located the stranded Lois and her son Jason. Just as the three prepared to escape the doomed yacht, the ship was split in two by the ever-expanding crystal formations. The wreckage plunged into the ocean, dragging them down with it. Lois was knocked unconscious by a falling door, and the only escape route was completely blocked. In that critical moment, Superman arrived. He rescued them from the depths and carried them to Richard's helicopter, ensuring their safety. As Richard flew the helicopter to a secure location, Superman turned back to confront the mastermind behind the chaos, Lex Luthor. Luthor and his crew were lounging on the newly formed crystalline island, smugly awaiting Superman's arrival. Determined to put an end to their schemes, Superman launched into battle. However, he was quickly overpowered. Luthor had deliberately coated the crystals with kryptonite before tossing them into the sea. Now kryptonite was embedded throughout the island, sapping Superman's strength. Luthor took full advantage of the situation, stabbing Superman with a kryptonite dagger and pushing him into the ocean. Weak and gravely injured, Superman sank below the waves. Lois, sensing that Superman was in mortal danger, woke up from her unconscious state. She persuaded Richard to turn the helicopter around to rescue him. Using his latent superpowers, Jason pinpointed Superman's location in the vast ocean. Together they pulled him from the water and removed the kryptonite blade from his body. Superman, though weakened, began to regain some of his strength. Without resting, Superman dove back into the ocean. He tore the crystal island from its base, hoisting the entire mass into the sky. Luthor and his crew, realizing their plan was unraveling, scrambled to escape. Most of his men were crushed by falling debris, but Luthor and his assistant narrowly escaped by plane. In a final act of redemption, the assistant discarded the remaining crystals into the collapsing island. Superman ascended higher and higher, dragging the dangerous island into outer space. With the kryptonite embedded in his body, steadily draining his life force, the effort completely exhausted him. He passed out and plummeted back to Earth, crashing into the ground with tremendous force. Thankfully, people quickly found him and rushed him to the hospital. The doctors managed to extract the remaining kryptonite fragments, but conventional medical methods were useless. The world held its breath as Superman showed no signs of life. Crowds gathered around the hospital, silently praying for a miracle. Among them, Lois and Jason visited Superman, and Lois whispered the truth of Jason's lineage into his ear. The revelation rekindled Superman's will to live. Not long after, against all odds, Superman opened his eyes. He was alive, and ready to continue protecting the Earth. Superman Returns was released in 2006, serving as a spiritual successor to the 1978 Superman movie and preserving the continuity of the 1980s Superman films. However, it did not directly follow the events of Superman 3 or Superman the Fall. This was the fifth installment in the Superman series and one of the most expensive films in Hollywood history, with a production budget of $270 million. Despite the high stakes, the movie grossed only $390 million worldwide. While it aimed to evoke nostalgia and focus on emotional storytelling, Superman Returns fell short in delivering innovative action and a compelling narrative, leaving audiences divided. Though it failed to launch a new Superman franchise, the film remains a heartfelt tribute to the classic Superman legacy.